All right, so let's look at first the prompt. So in the prompt itself, what did you see that was of importance that you needed to pay attention to? It does. So what parts are important? Okay, so she's talking to her son, right? Okay, so already you know that it's like there's like some kind of maternal instinct there, right?
The only thing it doesn't mention is that John Quincy Adams then became the fourth president.
Right. It doesn't do that. But to know that he becomes later a president, right? But also, I mean, if you look at that though in the prompt, they give you stuff that they think is vital to the analysis. So is that vital to the analysis? No. But that her husband is a diplomat and future president, right? That's important. Okay? So why is it important that we understand that his dad is a diplomat? What is that?
Because it's a big deal.
Okay, can we go beyond a big deal for AP students?
He's president. People look up to him.
Okay, but talk to me about what's the responsibilities of a diplomat? Like, why is that important that we understand that?
He has to go overseas.
Okay, so he say that again, Justin?
He has the power to make decisions and lead people in the country.
Okay, so the power to make decisions.
He has high expectations.
Okay, high expectations.
Essentially representing his country.
Yes.
Because it's like a new country, like their reputation is really like prideful.
Okay. So we're looking at reputation. So think about this idea of traveling abroad. For us, it's really not that big of a deal now, right? You're talking between, the late 1700s, early 1800s, traveling abroad. What does that mean? I mean, the travel is long. What else does it mean?
Taxing.
But
Getting there.
Well, I'm saying like means you're really important because not everybody had access to it. It was something that literally only the diplomats had access to.
Okay, so it's not something that everybody does. It's a big deal. Okay. So now that we understand this a little bit, right? And if you know, like, if you have any context of Abigail Adams, what do you know about Abigail Adams? She what?
I don't know. There's like this thing in U.S. history, and it's like the
Daughters of Liberty.
Yeah, Daughters of Liberty, and then the Republican Motherhood, I guess. Where she's like, it's like her job, or it's the women's job to, basically prepare their sons and their husbands to like go.
Okay. So if you have context to that, that's great. If you don't, that's okay. But to know that was kind of her role and her mission was to tell women that, their role is to not stand by their husbands and sons, but to prepare them for the world. That's big. Okay. So now let's box our task. Now that we've found everything, now find your task. What's your task? Yes. Okay, so now listen. Really, we don't care about this. Why? That's what we do in every essay, right? Okay, so really the big picture is this. So remember when I said when you are looking, you need a purpose for reading and what you're annotating. So here, I would put this at the top. That is your purpose for reading. Advice. That's all you're looking for. Advice throughout, right? That is the purpose. So one of the things that we've talked about is that our question 2 has changed considerably from the where's Waldo, let's go find the metaphor, the simile, the polysentence, and the asentence, let's go find our diddles, right? It has moved away from that. Now we're looking at how the argument is developed. So now that we've spent a quarter and a half on argument, right? How do people start their argument? How do they lead up to their argument? How do they build their audience to believe in what they are saying, right? How do they structure their body paragraphs, but how do they structure their argument in order to look at that? That's what we're looking at. Not so much the diddles, right? More we're looking at the structure of argument, okay? So the two assignments that I have for you tomorrow, that we'll do tomorrow, it's the same thing. I want you to look at, it's this implicit idea where you can't go and point to what it is that they're saying, okay? So here's the next thing that I want you to do. When you are looking through annotations, the very first thing I want you to do is number your body paragraphs, period, okay? So we go in, and before we start numbering our body paragraphs. Why? Why is it important that we number our body paragraphs? What does it give you before you even get in?
Like what's more important?
Structure to your body paragraphs, right? So, worst case scenario, you take the number of body paragraphs and divide it in half, right? If it's 8, the first 4 go in the first, the second 4 go in the last. If you can't find a natural shift, right? But many readers say that if there are 2 columns, somewhere around this break is usually a shift. What do you notice between this shift right here, like the break between 4 and 5? What do you notice in the length of body paragraphs? Okay, so before I even go in and read, I'm going to try to figure out if that is where my shift might be. I'm going to guess, so I'm marking the shift there. If all else fails and I don't find it anywhere else, then at least as I'm reading, I can say the first half of my essay will come from here. But if you look at it, and if you talk about argument, I don't even have to read anything. I can just say, right, that first half, paragraphs 1 through 3, I can tell you without reading that she's like building her responsibility, right? She is building her authority in those first 3 body paragraphs. She's also kind of stroking his ego to get him to listen. She hits her stride in the middle. And then again, she begins to back out, right? So she has to gain his attention as she's going through. She hits her stride in the middle, and then she has to slowly back out, right, of her argument. You can already tell that without even reading and knowing how to develop an argument. Does that make sense? Yes.
That's like I went into my big idea is about her society at the time where like women aren't really allowed to like try to say things and say how they feel.
That's not her advice, though.
Right.
So you're looking at the advice. So here, this has got to be your big picture, right? So your big picture is what is the big, like her big picture advice? You have to look at purpose. It has to be more than what her advice is. You have to look at it big, right? So if we are looking at like speaker, audience, purpose, you have to track those things throughout. Okay, so let's get into body paragraph number 1. What are you seeing its purpose, and what did you find interesting? Now, if you want to look at mine, I've used this many times, as you can see, right? But your annotations should be about the same. Within 5 minutes, you can get what we're getting ready to do right now. Okay? So what do you see in the first body paragraph? First of all, what do you see starting off? Bless you, bless you. Okay, so we need to move past the I's and U's. That is low level. If all we're talking about is first person and second person, then I know that you totally don't understand this passage.
It's kind of almost satirical and cynical because she's like, if I had thought your electives arose from proper deliberation.
Okay.
So that kind of like, that's how I read it. And then she's saying, I should not have urged you to accompany your father.
Okay, we also have to get away from this. We also have to get away from everything y'all think is sarcastic. Everything is not sarcasm. This is not sarcasm. There is no satire. There is no sarcasm in this whatsoever. When y'all don't know what to say about a tone, y'all say he's being sarcastic. Frederick Douglass was sarcastic. No, really, he was honest, right? Richard Louv from Last Child in the Woods. Oh, he's trying to be sarcastic. No. Truth is not sarcasm, okay? So you have to look at building an argument. If you start an argument off being sarcastic, is she going to gain the trust and the ear of her son? No. So you have to look at the big picture of her purpose is to convince him of something. So what is it that we see in body paragraph number 1 that stands out to you that will lend to her argument?
She's like asserting her authority without really like hurting him. Like she's not apologizing at all.
Give me a piece of evidence in the first body paragraph that leads to her argument, that lends itself to her developing her argument.
She finds that she's not that he's incapable of judging like what's beneficial to him, but she knows what's best for him.
Okay, yes. So right here, right?
Yeah.
So he can make a decision, right? He can make good decisions, but what?
He's not quite ready to make these incredibly major life decisions yet.
Okay, but he has some growth to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think also like, and she continues on with the idea of it later, but I think this is where she kind of starts it off, is that not only is he capable of doing it by himself, but like he also needs the guidance and he has the like foundations to make those decisions.
Okay. So we're still looking at advice. Y'all are talking about what she's saying, not advice, what advice she is giving. So notice in the second body paragraph, where do you see a little bit of shift in though she's talking about like her reasons. So this is her reasons for why she's talking to him, right? So what is the second body paragraph building to? Look at what this word is. Look at that transition there. However. That's a transition to something.
Shifting towards a more focus of him.
Yes. Yeah, so now this is her, this is to him, okay? So what is it that she's saying in that?
He's basically already on the right track, having him listening to her advice.
Okay? You're not looking at the advice, you're telling me what she says.
She is telling him to expand that his knowledge is what's gonna like make him better. It says your knowledge of the language must give you greater advantages now than you could possibly have reaped while it's ignorant of it.
Okay, so the knowledge of the language must give you greater advantages now than you could possibly have reaped while ignorant of it. Not just knowledge. What is her bigger picture? What is she telling him?
He's so privileged.
No.
To
What is the advice she is giving him?
Find the silver lining.
Take advantage of the experiences that you've been given.
Okay, because why?
because it's
Take advantage of the experience because what will that equal?
Greater
Prosperity.
Success.
Yeah, growth, success, right? So do you see how what y'all are telling me is summary of what she's saying? Not the advice that she is given. So all the things that you are saying is correct, but you're not telling me the big picture advice. And that's what we're looking for, right? So where else do you see evidence of this? Take advantage of experience because that will provide you some growth.
in the first half or throughout the
In the first half, 1 through 3, because the second half evidence is a little different. The advice in the second half.
When she says your improvement should bear some proportion to your failures, that's kind of like just exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like your growth will give you a better
Oh, it said nature is not.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so nature. What is she referencing in nature, though? Not just nature, but also, yes.
What's your
Nature
plan?
versus nature.
I feel like she's very like arrogant.
Find out yourself.
She's not.
I know, but it's just like
You. What y'all have got to do is you've got to stop hearing your own mother. through this. You have got to separate your experiences with your parents from this. We're talking late 1700s. We're not talking a female that is arrogant. We're talking a knowledgeable female, especially if you know that her purpose is to shape, right? She has got to shape them. She can't come off arrogant. Because who is she? She's just a female, right? What else do you see in that body paragraph? In the third body paragraph that talks about experience equals growth.
I don't want to see.
The metaphor. For the
Yeah.
river
I mean, you have the river, right?
And how it running through rich veins and minerals improve their qualities as they pass along. So like the rich veins and minerals like experiences and just comparing that to his life. We should do that.
Yes. Improve their qualities. You're talking about character. Now, that you see that it's not bad, but that's all we saw in the first half. What?
For the rich veins, it's kind of cool because it's like what we were talking about, like with her genes or like nature has not been. It's like her rich veins, like literally, rich blood is going throughout his body because
Yes.
maybe not like super rich.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
Yes. That's a tie-in. This idea of rich veins in nature, if you can see that she has paralleled that idea throughout, that's what you want to see.
I give water is also parallel throughout the entire thing.
Yes.
I thought it was only in that one section, and I was like reading, and I was like, it's definitely connected throughout. which is
Yes.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And show us that here in a minute. But do you see how your purpose is advice? If you got caught up in what she's talking about, summarizing what she's saying, you're only summarizing what she's saying. You're not telling me the advice that she is given. So if all you do is summarize what she's saying, then that means you don't really understand the big picture. Okay? And here's the thing. You have to look at that this prompt, like what advice is she using to they're not giving you the purpose. They're not giving you the big picture, right? So think back to Alfred Green, when Alfred Green was writing he was the first month of the Civil War, and he's trying to convince the slaves in the South to rise against. In the prompt, it gave you what his purpose was. You didn't have to find it. You just had to find examples of how he did that. This you have to look at and say, and I guarantee you it's going to be the same way in the one that y'all take in 18 days. Oh my God, stress. You have to look at the idea that it's a big picture. So you have to continue to tell yourself as you're reading through these passages that if I'm only talking about what it is that she is saying and not pulling out a bigger picture, then you're not going to get higher than a 5. There is always a big picture. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So let's move on to 4. Paragraph 4. What are you seeing in 4? Now, with the shift, if I'm talking about advice, could you keep the same advice throughout? You could, but I really see that there is a change here.
Is her just going through steps on how to?
Kind of, but that's not advice.
Oh, it's learned from the past.
Okay. So the first half was take advantage of your experiences. So let's go through and see, like, what about the past is she saying? Okay? And please think about all of the prompts that we have written about, right? All these argument prompts that we've written about that are these big picture kind of vague ideas, those are things that you can use to pull in here. So let's look at paragraph 4. What's in paragraph 4 that she is like building her argument? So here she talks about herself. Second body paragraph, she's kind of stroking his ego, right?
Married all these great speakers and stuff.
Yeah, and then.
But I don't care. What does that mean? So here she's talking about Cicero, and she's talking about Catiline, Varus, and Mark Antony.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the idea of like giant historical figures that everyone has remembered. It's like she's saying that you can be exactly like.
But what is it about their stories that's different?
They had to overcome challenges and adversity.
They actually had to try.
So anything that he has to go through, he can overcome and it won't
They
set
see
back.
opportunity.
Yeah, and then going back with the first sentence, paragraph 4,
Yep.
where she says, these hard times which a genius would to live. She's basically saying like take advantage of the time and like the advantages of like time of change and all that.
Okay, so here she's saying like it's a time of change, right?
Yeah, an opportunity. And he's already at an advantage.
Okay. So look at this idea of overcoming adversity, seizing opportunities. Is that a piece of advice that a mother would give? Yes. Okay, continue reading. So let's say you didn't get that. You could certainly get that if you continued reading. This is one of those things that if you're looking for advice and you're marking things down, after you divide it in half, you go back and look at the first half and go, okay, look at what I've like basically summarized throughout. What do all those things, what piece of advice is that, right? Remember when we talk about like working your way backwards, right? Divide your body paragraphs in half and then put down your evidence. That's where you look at your pieces of evidence and go, okay, what piece of advice is she giving here, right? Okay, what else did you find going through? Paragraph 4 is huge. She is in her stride. There is major stuff that she is covering in 4. You have to focus on what she's saying in 4. So what else do you see in 4? The what?
It's just like support. It's for supporting the overcoming adversity. It literally says that the habits of a vigorous mind are formed to continue difficulties.
Okay.
That's like almost word for word.
Okay.
Line 37, when it starts like when a mind is raised and animated, like she's telling you to like take everything and use it to shape who you are.
Okay.
Or that the heart is what really gives the statesman power.
Okay, so look. So you're talking about the mind, and then where's your heart part?
Engaged by
What line? Right there. Mind, heart. Eyewitness. Right? Look at those things. That's tying in. Also look at the connections that she's doing. Look, wisdom and penetration, retirement and leisure.
She compares them with lessons and fruit. Or like fruit
Yeah, I like that.
God's given gift that you're going to benefit from no matter what. But then lessons, like there's so
Bottom of paragraph 4.
It's the top actually.
Like,
It's where you did the heart.
Oh, yeah.
And like another thing that I analyze with that is like the idea of water and like fruit is supposed to be a symbol of like prosperity and growth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tie in the idea of water with it, it's like continuous improvement will get you the prosperity and the success that the fruit is supposed to like usually represent.
Yes.
I kind of got the impression, especially in like this app, she kind of is implying that before this, like up to this point, he was kind of lazy about some of his decisions, and that like he has all this stuff that is pretty much being handed to him, and he's not utilizing it to the fullest extent.
I don't know if you can assume that he's been lazy about maybe not taking full advantage of, I could say.
Like, that's just kind of what popped in my head.
Yeah, I don't think you have proof for the laziness. I think you would have proof for the idea that because she is so focused on taking advantage of, you can assume that he has not so far. Another thing that one of my periods looked at is this idea that these are specific examples, right? The idea of Cicero, Catiline. Here, we get a little bit more general. Why do we get a little more general?
because it's more in her current world, really not as much.
Well, if I give you a specific example and you don't see yourself in relation to the specific examples, but then I give a general example, can you not relate to that?
Yeah, you know, like it also ties it in a little bit better if he was like, you know, I don't really need to be like that, and then she gives me reasons why exactly you should.
Yeah.
It allows for him to put himself in.
Yes.
Where he's
Yes.
She's trying to teach him how to be a winner.
So if you look too, look, this goes to heaven. So you go from specific to general back to specific. Right? Because now you're talking about heaven. But what you also got to look at is look at the length of these sentences, you guys. That is all one sentence.
paragraph 5 is also one sentence.
Yes, and so is 6. So look at the organization of it, right? Look at what she's trying to say and look at the sentence structure as well. All right, so what about 5? What do you see in 5?
It's referencing.
Okay, so
Every power and activity of everyone, like, that is her advice, is that you need to take advantage of all of this. And then it goes back to the mind, to the heart, to the eye of things. And
where do you see the heart? Mind.
in the paragraph, when we talked about earlier. The
Oh.
paragraph that's on the heart.
Yeah.
So it's like repeating that.
So, but you're still not, if you're looking at this idea of overcoming adversity, you have to continue with that. You can't just tell me what summary this is. So if you're looking at this idea of adversity and overcoming adversity, where do you see that in here?
Exerting every power and faculty of the mind.
I think like also in reference to the father, when it says like he's taking such an active share or whatever, and then discharged with trust, and like that gave him the result. So by overcoming the adversity that he was faced, that is the result.
Yes.
I think that was the main thing she wanted in that paragraph.
Like he's his role model.
But that's not advice. You have to continue to look at what is her advice and how does that piece of evidence go back.
Well, she's saying like exerting every power is like using all of your potential.
Yes, but if we're going back to overcoming adversity, you have to continue to go back to relating. What you're saying is correct, but you have to go back to how does that prove that overcoming adversity leads to some improvement, right?
So that's what you would say for that paragraph.
Yes.
That it's not necessarily that it's referencing adversity. I mean, yeah, you kind of assume that such an important guy would face like a lot of challenges, but it's the fact that what he did got him.
Yes.
If you have
Yes.
some historical context on like what John Adams was before he was a diplomat, that would be helpful.
Yes, but you can't go too far off of that.
And in the sentence like really right before that, it talks about how they had to make a glorious defense of their invaded liberty. So that was his challenge, and now this is
Yes.
what he's been like, what he got out of it. Even like she's like, your father is so happy, you want to be that process.
Right. Yes.
One thing that I analyzed, but I didn't actually analyze it, I just did it in my second thing of annotation. But like it goes from the thing of like water and growth and like just like prosperity and like life, I guess I would say, and then it goes into like war and desolation and like challenge. Like could you connect that with like her advice and like how if you don't like take advantage of the success and stuff that is laid out ahead of you and like achieve that growth, then you would probably go down the other path.
Yes.
Or it's like you kind of counter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. What about paragraph 6? Sentence number 6, actually. Okay. What do you see?
Okay, well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Might cut it, most likely. Okay, so she talks about truth and she kind of like personifies it, like the strict and inviolable or whatever
Mhm.
regard you have ever paid to truth gives you pleasing hopes that you will not swerve from her dictates. I tied that into the first paragraph, how she was saying, or I mean, I guess to where it says readily submitted to my advice. So I almost got it to where she was like indirectly comparing herself to the truth, and that she is truth.
Mother
that
knows
she
best.
is going
I
to.
like that. No, like just as she says that she knows that he won't swerve from the dictates of the truth, he won't.
Yeah,
Like from her.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
guidance.
It's like in the second.
And then like at the
That's
very
a
end,
huge connection.
It says, if you can't figure out a way to do this for yourself, at least do it for me.
Yeah, well, and then, yeah, I mean, but if you look at 2, right, she says in this last paragraph, it's the first time that she mentions parents as plural, right? And again, she references your affectionate mother, tying back to her son, right? And she basically gives him no way of getting out of it, right? She says that you won't swerve from your dictates, right? From her dictates, truth, right? But adjudgest every manly virtue, so man up, right? And then you're going to be a good citizen, honor your country and your parents. So now we're looking at like God, country, family.
And we can connect that to earlier when it said like the war tyranny and whatever the scores would be on.
Yes.
We can connect those two.
Yes. Now, all of that annotation could have been done within 5 to 6 minutes. But what happens is this, you're reading without a purpose. You go in to read this just to understand it. You need to go in to read it to understand it and to get out your purpose. Your purpose is advice. So you have to continue to ask yourself, am I just summarizing or what is the big picture? So you would look back at this and say, okay, now that you've seen this, what advice is she giving? You're going to have to look at the big picture. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I have samples. Do you want to see samples? Okay. Okay, you want to see some good ones?
Did you have two, like,
We
even
also
though
know
for
how
two, like, bigger pictures, was that where kind of the bigger advice is in the thesis, the second part? So what if you want one paragraph to be one advice and one paragraph to be
I think ultimately you could cover both of those in your thesis.
Yeah, okay, oh, you mean.
Right, those could be
one
both
as
of your
one?
big ideas, right? You could put them in there.
Okay, so you're not.
She maternally addresses the idea of taking advantage of
Your situation.
of his situation and then identify a tone.
Could you say
and-
lineage?
Yes, for the first one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, you could.
instead of like the situation, like lineage, then you can directly tie that back into the veins.
Yes.
Nature with the genes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to read the 4. So the 4 is this. The 4 is, they're so close. The 4 is, if only is what they said. If only is the 4, right? If only I would have them for 2 more days, I could have gotten in there. If only they would have added 2 or 3 more sentences to each body paragraph, I could have gotten them there. If only. A 4 is salvageable. Very quickly, a 4 can go from a 4 to a 6. Quickly. Okay? So let's read the 4. In a letter Abigail Adams wrote to her son, John Quincy Adams, she provides him with advice that should make him a great leader. Rhetorical devices such as pathos, rhetorical questions, and repetition are all evident in this letter. If you read the intro from the get-go, you already know it's low level. If you are listing devices in your thesis, you are probably more than likely not going to get higher than a 4. Even that first sentence shows me that it's low level. Now, do some people write themselves into higher? Yes. Adams uses pathos to express her love to her son. She hopes he is safe, but she also wants him to show what a great leader he is capable of being. Something such as, these are the times which a genius would wish to live and honor your country are all ways that Mrs. Adams expressed her pride in her son. She believed John Quincy Adams was powerful and could handle anything given to him during his voyage. There's no how or why. They get it, but there's no extension. If only they would have had 2 more sentences. But still, organizing your body paragraphs in ethos, logos, pathos, which we have never ever talked about in here, never have addressed, never have even addressed appealing to ethos, logos, pathos in here. So I should not see it in any of your essays, right? She is appealing to his, you can say, yes, she is appealing to his emotion, but she is appealing to his sense of satisfying his mother. That's an emotional appeal, right? But I don't care about the emotional appeal. What kind of emotion are you talking about? That's what you can talk about. The rhetorical question with Cicero and Mark Antony would make John Quincy Adams think about his bravery and strength he needs to tap into while in France. This question is basically asking, how would Cicero be portrayed now if he wouldn't have had Catiline, blah, blah, blah. John Quincy Adams needs to compare himself to Cicero and come out as a great leader. If only they would have just had 2 more sentences saying, okay, so now what's its purpose? Why is he trying to compare? What is the advice? Notice that they have not talked about the advice at all. All they have done is summarize. Another sign Mrs. Adams wants her son to be something great would be repetitive use of encouraging words. She continually uses words like diligence, powerful, justice, humor, and etc. All these words are similar because they all relate to war or tyranny. John Quincy Adams deserves to be known as a great leader. So many have done great things before him, and it is expected him to follow in their footsteps. All you did was list. The words are taken out of context, so they mean nothing. So this is a Where's Waldo, hunt and peck, and just give me a list. If you're giving me a list of words, then I know you don't get it. Right? So it's right there as a 4. It's close. Okay? Yeah, that was bad. Let's read the 6 real quick. In Abigail Adams' letter to her youngest son, John Quincy, she gives him advice on how to make the most of his natural talents and succeed in this world. In her attempt to underscore the importance of her message, Adam relies on several rhetorical strategies. In order to persuade her son to do as she advises, Adams uses rhetorical strategies such as expectation and a responsibility to the world and invocation of authorities and role models. So, it's a misstep because that's not a rhetorical strategy. Is it big picture? Yeah, it's kind of big picture, but it's a misstep because they mislabeled it, right? But still higher than the 4. Yes.
So if they didn't say rhetorical strategies,
It doesn't make a difference. We're still reading to see if they move beyond that. Okay? To impress upon John Quincy the necessity of following her advice, Abigail Adams emphasizes the expectation she and society have as such a brilliant young man and his duty to the world to capitalize on said intelligence. John Quincy Adams says, has been favored with superior advantages, blah, 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 should bear some proportion. She is emphasizing that due to his intelligence and upbringing, he has large shoes to fill so that to speak and he must seize these advantages. Purpose, right? She expects this as she does the world as a whole. Adams does set the same strategy later in the letter with the use of the words your lot in referring to her son's watching of the country's current troubles and inspiring past. Not our lot or the American lot, but your lot. Here's purpose. Adams is clearly stressing her son's responsibility. I'll put these up so you can look at them, okay?
Thanks.